Hello, boys and girls. Welcome back to Mr. Herring's fifth grade social studies class. Today we are talking about the Declaration of Independence. Our learning target, I can identify key elements of the Declaration of Independence and explain its importance by analyzing its three main parts. My essential question today is, what is the main purpose of the Declaration of Independence? All right, so let's go ahead and get started. So before we jump in, we've got a few vocabulary terms that we need to talk about. A grievance is one of the words that was used in the Declaration, and a grievance is a complaint. Independence, of course, we know in this context, the colonists were using independence as freedom, and a right is a freedom that is established by law. That means that you're given by law, and in this case, later on, it'll be the Constitution. Treason is when you betray your country, betraying one's country. So if I were to go to Russia and give them some of our military secrets, that would be considered treason, and I would be tried and probably convicted and potentially even executed. And then we have a tyrant. A tyrant is a ruler who has no legal limits on his or her power by law or constitution. That means they can do whatever they want and nobody can do anything about it. And this is how the colonists felt about King George III. They felt he was kind of a tyrant. So let's get started. So the Declaration of Independence. During the Second Continental Congress, delegates write and sign the Declaration of Independence. Now, it's important to know that this Congress met for a very long time, over a year. They started in May 15th, 1775, and it doesn't conclude, the Declaration isn't really signed until August 2nd of 1776 is the last signature. It isn't approved until July 4th, 1776. So this is a long Congress. It's over a year. And while this is happening, the war is going on. There's battles and things like that. We established a government under something called the Articles of Confederation, which we'll talk about later. But that timeline, it is linear, but there's a lot of things going on at the same time as the Continental Congress. Okay. The Declaration of Independence is by far one of the most important documents in the United States history. They've made movies about it, like we'll watch National Treasure, which is a great movie. It's a very important document. 56 delegates from 13 colonies met in Philadelphia at Independence Hall to discuss how to separate from Britain. So Pennsylvania, the colony of Pennsylvania, where Benjamin Franklin is from, there's a very historic hall called Independence Hall. If you go there today, there's a giant bell hanging over it called the Centennial Bell, where once the Liberty Bell was hung until it was replaced by the Centennial Bell. But they met to discuss how are they going to break away from Great Britain. What is the best way to do this? They all knew, well, not all, most of them felt it was the right thing to do for their liberty, for their freedom. The Declaration of Independence told King George III that the colonists did not want to be part of England anymore. And that is kind of the theme of the Declaration. It's just telling him why they no longer want to be part of Britain. And you have to understand, many of the men, Benjamin Franklin especially, John Adams, had tried multiple times to convince King George III, to listen to reason. And he just wasn't having it. He didn't want to hear it. The Declaration of Independence, John Hancock serves as the president of the Second Continental Congress, as we talked about earlier. And this is a very big job because, you've got 56 men from all over the colonies that don't really get along. They don't see eye to eye all the time. They all have different needs and different wants. And so it's a very difficult job to keep everybody in order. But that is his job. He does a very good job at it. He's a very wealthy businessman from the colony of Massachusetts. And he is unanimously selected as the president of the Second Continental Congress. And this document represented the official first step toward the separation of the 13 colonies from the control of Great Britain. So this is the very first step in the 13 colonies becoming a new nation. It also stated that the colonies had the right to three things. The most profound statement, Thomas Jefferson writes, that all men are created equal and are endowed with rights by their creator, and of those rights we have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And it's very ironic to me, of course, that these 56 men are fighting for this middle word here, liberty, which means freedom, and they're saying that all men have the right to freedom, but the vast majority of the men in that room owned slaves, so they didn't really feel that all men had this right, but they felt that they did. The Declaration of Independence has three main parts. It has an introduction, which tells the ideals that justify why the colonies want to seek independence. So it's just telling them why they want independence. The second part is called the grievances. It just provides a explanation of all the complaints that the colonists have about King George. And I don't remember the exact number. I want to say 17. There's a number 7 in there for some reason. But it was a very long list of complaints that they had against King George and even Parliament. And then part 3 was the conclusion, or the declaration itself. And it just formally declares that the colonies are now free and independent. It just says we're no longer part of Great Britain. So the way I simplify this, the introduction is why, the grievances are my complaints, and the conclusion is telling the king we're free. We're no longer part of you. The introduction, we believe these truths are obvious. So there's 3 main things. Everyone is born with equal and has certain rights that cannot be taken away, like the right to live, be free, and pursue happiness. Number 2, governments are created to protect people's rights, and they get their power from the people they govern. And number 3, if a government doesn't do its job and starts to harm people's rights, the people have the right to change and get rid of it. So real simple. We all have the right to be free. The government that leads us has one job, and that's to protect our rights. And if they don't follow those rules and protect our rights, we have the right to replace them. Part 2 was the grievances. Now, I could list and just read word for word on here, but you guys from class, I'm sure you remember all the things that the colonists complained about: being overtaxed, the blockade of the Boston Harbor, all the acts, the Quartering Act, the Townshend Acts, the Tea Act, the Sugar Act, Molasses Act, and Tolerable Acts. There was just a long list of things that the colonies were just incredibly upset about. Leaving the army in the colonies to kind of boss them around, they felt, being told what to do, when they could leave, when they could go places, when they had to be home. Martial law was really hard for them after the Boston Tea Party. But it was a long list of grievances, and these grievances are just the complaints. And that was the essential piece of part 2. It was just a list of complaints they had against King George. Then we have the conclusion, or what they call the declaration. And in simplest terms, it just tells King George we're no longer part of Great Britain. We are a free and independent country. They say a ruler who acts like a tyrant isn't fit to lead a free people. And this last bullet here I like to read because it's a very profound statement. So we, the leaders of the United States of America, meeting together in Congress, ask for the approval of God for what we're about to do. They didn't need permission from anybody else. They just felt they had permission from God to break away from Great Britain. In the name of the good people who live in these colonies, we declare that these colonies should be free and independent states. We're no longer loyal to the British king, and we're ending all political ties with Great Britain. And if you just take a moment and think about this, this empire has been around for a really, really long time, and it is probably the most powerful empire in in the world history. And nobody had ever dared to break away from them until the colonies had done this. So the Declaration of Independence also states that all men are created equal. Like I said, there's a contradiction to that regarding slaves, but the 56 men in that room felt that they were all the men who were created equal. The document was written by a young Virginian named Thomas Jefferson. He's the main author of the document. He's not the only author. There's lots of people who help, but he gets credit for being the main author. He writes the document in about 17 days during that Second Continental Congress that meets for over a year. It's a very long and wordy document. It's got some very strong wording and phrases in there to the king. John Adams, Roger Sherman, and Benjamin Franklin, they all give Jefferson some help in revising the Declaration of Independence to make it perfect in their eyes, make certain sentences a little bit more stern or forceful, and soften up some others, change some wording to make it just perfect, to show King George exactly why and what they're doing. Congress finally voted to approve the Declaration of Independence on July 4th, 1776. However, it wasn't signed until the last signature wasn't added until August 2nd, 1776. But it took that long, once they approved it, to get all the signatures, because most of the men had gone home, and getting them back to Independence Hall was sometimes difficult. But on August 2nd, the last signature was added to the document, and it had officially become the Declaration approved by Congress. And this is, of course, is why we celebrate July 4th as America's Independence Day, a good day for all. Some people say we should celebrate August 2nd, but it was approved on July 4th, so that's why we celebrate it. We get fireworks and celebrations and things like that. This painting hangs in Washington, D.C. I think it's in the archives now. After the Declaration of Independence was signed, this is a picture of all the men on that August date with the final signatures. A new nation was born, and we call this nation the United States of America. We're no longer the 13 colonies. We're no longer 13 independent colonies. We are now the United States of America. All right. And that wraps up the Declaration of Independence. We'll have a couple more activities in class to help you. There's a note page. If you did not get it, make sure you grab that when you get back to class. Feel free to go back and watch this again. Pay attention to those highlighted words because those are the things that you'll see on assessments. But other than that, hope you enjoyed, and we will catch you guys on the flip side. We'll see you then, guys.